supposed to be happening sometime this week. The NFL is anticipating officially extending the season from 16 games to 17 games. Oh, excuse me. Now, a year ago, this was actually right before before COVID and everything got crazy. The NFL and the NFLPA both agreed upon the new CBA, where we talked about how it helped avoid a lockout or a strike, and then from there, a part of their agreement was that the season would go from 16 games to 17 games. They were talking about reducing the preseason from 4 games to 3 games and things along that nature. We obviously saw them expand the playoffs. That was another part of that agreement. But it's anticipated that it's going to officially happen this week, because this is the first opportunity that the NFL has to officially expand to 17 games. They couldn't do it in 2020. They had to wait until 2021. But now is when it's available, and everybody's anticipating them go ahead and doing it. But I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Because I remember when we initially talked about it, right? It was kind of like the health and safety element of it, but the players went ahead and agreed with it. So less about the health and safety thing. We're seeing a good amount of players voice displeasure with the 17 game. Alvin Kamara was a prime one, and then obviously Ronnie Stanley, the tackle in Baltimore. They've been very vocal about their disdain for having to play 17 games. But knowing that they all agreed upon it, how do you feel about these guys voicing their displeasure with it now that it's about to happen when they already had agreed upon it?
I actually don't mind them voicing displeasure or their opinions on it at all, because actually I agree with them, not from that standpoint. Okay. They're probably thinking, this is my job, health and safety, extra work, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. That doesn't really bother me. I just think they had it perfect with 16. As a fan, I think 16 was perfect, and then the 6 teams making the playoffs was perfect too. So I was disappointed when they went from 6 to 7. I mean, I guess unless the Steelers benefit from that and make it as the 7th team, or somehow we make it on the 17th game. Yeah. That's obvious. But as a whole with the NFL, there's something to scarcity. That's the one thing that no one was saying about the NFL. Yeah. Outside of, listen, I'm gonna watch. Let's just be straight out. I'm gonna enjoy the extra game. But whenever you were talking about the NFL in totality of what things need to be changed, what could they do to improve, you were never saying, hey, let's add an extra team to the playoffs. Let's add an extra game. Because it was perfect. There was something to that scarcity. Definitely 16 games, 6 teams. It felt like those teams that got in deserved it. Yeah. What do we say about the NBA, the MLB, the NHL?
Oversaturated, man.
Oversaturated. Yeah. Too many games, too many teams make the playoffs. Doesn't really feel like the regular season matters. Yeah. The NFL was perfect.
I mean, think about even as exciting as the NHL is right now, with them condensing the season to 56 games, it still feels like it drags on at times, man.
Yeah, so just from a viewing standpoint, the storylines and as the season goes, that's why I'm disappointed in it. Because I don't know what the line is, because I think they were talking about 18 games. No, I think that's even more.
18 is what they have been pushing for since 2010 when we had our lockout. That was the sticking point for us. We were like, we're not playing that many games. Now, that was supposed to be the sticking point this time when they were like, we're going to go 17 games. But I forgot what was the leverage that they had that ultimately got the players to cave. But I also remember when the vote happened, how a lot of us former players were a little upset at the fact that I think it was, I forgot how much percentage of players didn't even vote. Like, they didn't even vote yes or no. Yeah, it was like, I think 50% of the players didn't even vote if they wanted to go forward with this or not. So for me, that's why I had the bigger issue with the players voicing displeasure now, because it was like, you have the opportunity. When we talk about scarcity, I understand everything that you said, right? And that makes sense from our perspective, just in terms of the viewer, right? Yeah. Less is more sometimes in terms of just the product. But in terms of them complaining about it, I'm just like, bro, if Deke, if I come in here, like if I talk to you and I'm like, hey man, are you okay with coming in here 3 days a week? And you're like, yeah, I'm good for 3 days a week. And then when it's time for you to start coming in 3 days a week, you're like, dang, man, I wish we could go back to just 2 days a week. Like, this sucks. Like, man, what about my health and safety? I'm like, but you already agreed upon it. Yeah. So, like...
No, you're right, for sure.
That's been my biggest issue with it lately. Like, we spoke our piece on it beforehand. And I agree with you, even when you said it then. I agree with you when you say it now in terms of we don't need to have a 17, 18-game season. I feel like the NFL was perfect where it was at with 16. Even when you added the extra playoff team this year, it was cool. We enjoyed it, but I personally like the two team buys. I like that, the 1 and 2 seed, because it still is, I don't know, it's just weird to say, but in certain instances, the top 2 teams should be rewarded. You know what I mean? Like, and
I
I
agree.
feel like they should have been rewarded in this scenario. Whereas you could be the 2 seed in the NFL right now, and it doesn't matter. Like, it has zero impact. So to me, I'm just like, I didn't need that. That wasn't a selling point for me. But now when you just see them continuing to add, it's just like,
it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
I think 16-6 was perfect.
17, you know, it's going to go to 18. And for the NFL, I mean, this is monumental in terms of the change. The first time they've changed the season list since 1978.
There's been 2 seasons that had to do with lockouts, but
right.
other than that, it's been 16 games for...
Always, yeah.
What would this be, 40 years?
Yeah, since, like I said, since 1978, so...
And it's been perfect.
Yeah. It's a long time.
Yeah, it upsets me a little bit. So maybe that's why I said with them...
Voicing it, yes.
Yeah, with them voicing it. Like, I agree with the sentiments, but you're right. Their reasoning's different than mine.
Right.
And, yeah, if you agree upon it, it's like, hey, what can you do?
Yeah, because I'm like... For me and you, we have all right to be. It's all right to be able to complain about this because we didn't have a say in it. We just got to deal with whatever y'all decide on.
Hey, we're gonna watch.
Right.
We're gonna enjoy. It's fine, but long term, I don't like this.
Yeah, but it's like you guys, y'all actually were in the fight. Y'all are stars in this league too. It's not like y'all are some, bottom of the barrel roster guy. Like, no. If y'all were the ones saying, hey, we need to be more active, we need to learn this, we need to say no to this. Well, y'all would have been in this scenario. Y'all could have been the leaders on your teams and directly talked to the guys on the roster and said, we're going to make sure that all of us are voting. And then from there, because y'all are stars, y'all been to Pro Bowls, you connect with other players on other teams. If it was that, Pouncey, right? We love him. And even though at times his message might have been a little different than what everybody else's was, the one thing he did through it all was he was vocal, right? He was going to let you know what he thought was right and what he thought was wrong. Even though his method might have been a little too aggressive at times. Like, he's like, yo, this is why we should not take this deal. This is why this deal isn't good. So if he were to complain about this right now, I'd be all for it.
Sure.
I'm like, absolutely. You were busting your butt to make sure you could do what you could do. But these other guys are like, bro, where was that at? Where was that energy at when this was happening? So I don't want to see that now after the fact,
Yeah. I don't know, dude. I just really don't like it. I just really don't like it, man. Because you can't go back now.
No, cat's out the bag, man.
Yeah, right. Because whenever you go to the next agreement, all your points that you brought up about, hey, you got to stand firm, you got to agree to it, make it a vote.
Yep.
They're gonna laugh at you if you try to bring up, hey, man, let's go back to 16-6 or something like that. They're gonna laugh at you because now it's already 17.
What did Coach Tomlin say? You can't put the Jello back in the box, baby. That Jello's already out, man. You can't put it back in the box, man.
Yeah, just try to not get it up to 18 now.
Right, but.
It might. I mean, it probably will.
Slippery slope, man.
It is. It definitely
because the whole argument, I remember in 2010, what we kept saying was just the health and safety standpoint. And we had did the math on it where we said basically if the average career span is this with being 16 games, when you add that 17th game, the percentage of your risk and how we calculated it out, it was shorten everyone's career by a year or two just based on the additional year, the additional game, how it would add up and because it was weird, we don't, one game isn't weighted the same as, one. It's not 1 for 1. We're saying, the equivalent of playing one game is, on your body, the equivalent of 2 or 3. You know what I mean? So, when we were doing the math on it, we could see why it didn't make sense then.
One game added to 16 games, too.
Yeah,
you're playing all those games in a row. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, and then when you do that for this year, then you do it again next year. And then because at the time, they were trying to alter the off-season stuff, too. And we're just like, yo, this is going to be too much, on our bodies. It's going to shorten our careers. Which, for the NFL, this is why we started getting mad. We said it makes perfect sense because we talked about from being vested standpoint in the business element, right? You got to get to that 4th game or that 4th year, the 3rd game of your 4th season. And how we talked about how the NFL can do different things to maneuver to keep players from getting there and how the benefits are set here, but yet the career span on average is here. You know what I mean? So you could just see how they setting you up where you're never going to be able to accomplish certain things. And we said, man, well, when you talk about adding a game, that's going to cut down on a lot of this even more, and you're not adjusting the qualifications. So you're going to put us at an even further disadvantage from the long-term health standpoint. And that was the big sticking point why we were able to make that thing not get advanced back then. But now to see it get passed and to see that half the guys didn't even vote, you're just like, bro, you don't understand what you're doing right now. And I think with this, it was something initially that was going to benefit them. I don't remember what it was. I know it was going to be no lockout or no strike. That was a big part of it. But it was something else. And I don't remember off the top of my head what it was. But that played into it. But it's just those were all short-term goals, short-term things where it's like from the long term, it sets you back a lot more. And we just like, man, it just looked too narrow-minded in terms of the approach with this go around, man. But, you know, can't cry over spoiled milk, man. It is what it is right now. They're going to have to endure it until the next agreement comes up where they're able to vote on it. But, yeah, this is slippery slope, man, in terms of these games being added now, man.
It's funny, too, because we talked about at the beginning of the podcast about growing. You're either growing or dying. So you get from one standpoint, the NFL's trying to grow. There's got to be a better way than this, though.
Yeah.
Than just adding a game simply. There's got to be a better way.
I mean, and let's be real, from a sports standpoint, the NFL has monopolized the, media market. Other sports don't want to schedule anything around football. Like, you could just, and we talked about even with the NBA, right? As big, and we say in America, the NBA is probably the number 2 largest, watch sport. And especially when it comes to, playoffs and stuff. And we said, man, the Clippers, remember, they got beaten. They got upset by, who was it? The Jazz or the Nuggets last year?
Denver, yeah.
And we weren't even caring about it because it was just happening to be during football season when what was going on. Remember with the altered schedule?
Yeah.
And we was like, no one even cared.
I was watching Jets Broncos over a finals game.
Right. And we're just like, what are we doing here? But that's football. That's how big it is. So it's not like you're hurting for attention. If anything, y'all have all the attention, you know? And I even like when they say we're going to do more football abroad. We're going to play a game in London. We're going to play in Mexico. We're going to play in Canada. I love that. If anything, if you want to continue to grow it, do more of that.
Sure. More access type of stuff. Who's able to go to the combine? What if they open up the combine to fans and stuff? Because you're seeing it online. More and more people love getting the insights on, dude, how good is this Zach Wilson going to be? How good is Trevor Lawrence going to be?
Think about how people went crazy over just the throw from Zach Wilson, right?
Seriously.
And that was just a little clip. Imagine if you're
people
selling...
would go.
Yes.
People would go. I don't know if the market would have been there 10, 20 years ago, but I think now just with how the media is, people like these just little clips of highlights and just trying to be ahead of the game on prospects. I really think... that's just one thing. But there's got to be other ways to do it.
Yeah. But... such as
it's too late. I mean,
it's too late, yeah.
It's too late.
I think the only way we could see them potentially revert back to 16 is if we start to see...
What would the players have to give up?
No. It would have to be one of these things. In terms of what they would have to give up for this to work, it would have to be they give up health. In terms of if you see... and the problem is because the NFL, they know what they're doing from a data standpoint. They're not going to allow a 1 or 2 year increase in injuries. Say the injuries will happen, week 17, and then first week and second week of the playoffs. If you're seeing a lot more injuries then you can see them say, all right, the data we've gathered, this 17th game has put too much stress on the bodies of these players, and we're seeing a lot of
stars are going down.
Right, but it would have to be star players, number one, not middle of the roster guys. Have to be star players. But they still wouldn't change it after 1 year because they're going to say, well, that could have been a one-off. It was a COVID year prior to that, so all these different factors. It would take, multiple years. And for the NFL, the sooner the players try to switch it, the longer the NFL needs to gather data, if that makes sense. So after 2 years, if the players are like, yo, man, our bodies are breaking down, you see what we're looking at right now after 2 years, the NFL's be like, well, that's a small sample size. We need to see what it looks like over 5 years. We need to see what it looks like over 10 years. But now, the flip side is, if those star players start going down frequently early on, it won't take long. The NFL will be like, well, look, man, Brady went down, Ben went down, this guy went down, that guy went down. All that was in that 17, 18, 19 time frame.
Ratings are down.
Ratings are down from it. We can't deal with that. Or don't let it be, oh, man, it was a Super Bowl, but this guy has a stress fracture from the wear and tear from the season, and now this starting quarterback can't play. That type of stuff would have to happen. But you see how significant it is. And from the player standpoint, they're not giving up anything financially, but what do they have to give up? Their health. It has to be like that because just them voicing their displeasure with it publicly, because they've already signed off on it by vote, they're never going to have leverage.
And it's already the standard, too.
Yeah.
Like I said, if you're coming in and trying to reverse it, and you're trying to do these negotiations, this isn't going to be much of a priority for you.
No,
because it already wasn't in the past.
Yeah. So that's...
If this is a sticking point, you're just probably going to overlook it and worry about other things.
Absolutely, man.
What else did I want to say? Oh, whenever you're talking about the injuries in the late stages of the season, week 16, 17, I guess it would be 18 now, it's tough because you have the hard data, but there's always the other side of it, can we really correlate this?
Right.
Because there's always going to be injuries.
Well, yeah, and trust me, they try to correlate injuries for everything. So I remember they did a study. This would have been in 2012, where they were trying to figure out the safest field conditions to play on. And they would rate, okay, how many players have certain injuries, like lower body, ACLs, Achilles, and stuff like that. And they would go down. I remember in Buffalo at the time, we were like mad because they said we had like the lowest rated field just because of the amount of people who were having like ACLs and different lower body injuries that took place on that field right there. But even with that, you know what I mean, they were still kind of weird in terms of how they wanted to correlate. Like sometimes they would correlate it as a positive spin to redo the field. But then if we're trying to correlate it to say, well, hey, that means that all teams need to go grass instead of artificial turf, which we were playing on in Buffalo. Now they're like, well, no, that's a little different now. That data doesn't directly correlate to that. And we're just like, well, you just told us playing on this field turf is why we have a higher risk of injury. So if that's the case, don't tell me about changing my shoes. Why don't you change the surface to a safer surface? We know as players that grass has, the data is there. It lets you play a lot longer. It's a lot easier on your joints. You typically have less of those, structural injuries taking place on grass fields compared to your turf fields just because of the way that they're created. It's like, y'all know this. But the problem is it costs a lot more money to maintain a grass field compared to artificial turf field or just an artificial field, right? So you can see why they're like, it doesn't make sense for us to go that route. We're going to tell you that y'all need to just change cleats. We'll get better technology. We'll catch up eventually. But we're going to do what's cost efficient for us. So you can just see some of those disconnects and stuff like that, just some previous examples, man.
Speaking of fields, I don't know what the hell they've been doing with Heinz Field over the past 5 to 10 years because it really holds up later in the season.
Oh, no, it's better now, yeah.
Dude, back in the 2000s, man, holy hell, that field was a mess.
When we came here in 2013, I think that was the last year before they did like a full they dug it up and did a full, just like, it's not Bermuda grass. I forgot what it is, but they put it in, and now it has like it's similar to what they use in New England with the, it's like sand in it and all type of stuff, but it helps it with the extreme conditions that you play in Pittsburgh between like the rain, the snow, and stuff like that. But yeah, it's packed in way better because in the past, like when we came in 2013, we had to wear these like special like detached cleats where it's like almost claws that come out your shoe because it was like, it looked like beach sand, and they just spray painted it. No, like you're looking at it, just like, bro, this is not safe. And it was like right around midfield, and they were like, when we came, because it was late in the year, they said, well, all right, on Friday it was, they said Friday it was like a high school championship game. They said Saturday Pitt played, and then we had the game on Sunday. We're just like, what? Like, this is crazy. And you could just see how destroyed the field was, and that's why a lot of players, especially during that time, hated coming to Pittsburgh to play because you're like, bro, this is a death trap. Like, this field is terrible, man. Like, the team is good, but the field is, like, just the worst ever.
It was terrible for a good stretch of time. But now it just looks like when it just comes wintertime, it just looks like dead grass. Yeah. That's all. But it looks like it's pretty stable, and you don't really see anything where you're like, oh, man, the field's really messing up the players out there.
But even, like, after games now, and fans won't be able to see this because this is, like, typically 45, almost an hour sometimes after the games. Like for us who have either family in town and we, take our folks onto the field, stuff like that. Like you can see them actually like re-rolling the grass out. Like sometimes, like if they know the weather's about to get bad after the game, they will literally roll that whole field up. It's crazy. Oh, wow. Yeah, they'll take it off to the side. Then once they're done, they put it back out there, do the re-side. Like it's a cool process to see, but. That it's stuff like that where you're just like, man, if y'all really value the safety element, y'all could do this everywhere, right? Because we know, okay, you're going to be a lot, just more healthier.
Grass and maintaining it really well.
Absolutely, but it does cost a lot more money to do that. So that's that part of it. But we'll see, man. I think we both agree though, man. This is not going to go back down, man.
What are we gonna do? We're just gonna watch the game. I mean, I'm gonna enjoy it. I'm gonna enjoy another Sunday of football, but what does the Bible say? Something about being too gluttonous.
Oh, man. Look at this. I like woke Deke. Woke Deke over here, man.
It's one of those things. We're going to love it, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, damn, dude. I want to go back to 16. There was something perfect about it. There was something perfect about 16.
Supply and demand.
Because we got lucky last year with the 7 teams, at least in the AFC. Not in the NFC because Washington made the playoffs, but... Well, that didn't really have to do with the extra teams because they made it based off the division.
Bad, yeah.
But with us, I mean, the 7 teams, like all those teams were in the mix. Who ended up making
remember
it?
the Colts. The Colts were
the Colts ended up making it. The Dolphins got bounced, and they were 10-6. So it worked out this year. It'll be interesting to see though if we start getting like
because this would have been
these 8-8 teams.
This was going to be the first year where it would have worked out like that.
Well, we would have made it.
The previous 2 years, we would have made it 8 and 8.
7 seed.
Yeah, which was like drastically different. Which we all thought it was going to be more of that versus 10 and 11 win teams, man.
Well, and even actually the NFC with the 7 seed, Cardinals were in the mix, and they were still a solid team. I don't know if they finished 9-7 or not. I don't think they finished 10-6.
Yeah, I think 9.
But still, it would have been nice to see them in the playoffs. So it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't one of those scenarios where a team made it and you're like, these guys don't deserve it. I'm sure we'll see that though coming forward.
Hey, just give it a little time. Just give it a little time. It will definitely happen, man.
That's happened, but it's usually just been the divisions, the NFC West, the Seahawks at 7-9.
And NFC South.
Dallas made it at 8-8 once, winning the division.
Yeah, NFC South has done it.
Sure, yeah, Carolina was 7-9.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they did it twice, though. They did it like twice.
It's these NFC teams, man.
Absolutely, because they hosted Seattle the 1 year. Carolina did, and it was like, yo, how you hosting your team? Your record's worse. And then we obviously know the flip side with Beast Mode and what they did versus the Saints that year when they hosted the game at 7-9. We're like, yo, what the heck?
The Saints were a legit good team. They were like 11-5 or 12-4 or something.
Yeah. It's a bad matchup, man.
Yeah.
It's a matchup league, bro. It's a matchup league.
They didn't even have Russ at that time.
No, it was a bad matchup, man. They couldn't stop the run. He put the team on his back, though.
Yeah.
It's like that, man.